it's very clear that making inroads into this community, you need to do so with people who are already part of that community, and you need to do so with in a way that's consistent with the culture and in line with the culture. And I know this Dia de los Muertos, I know another station we work with a lot, WNIJ in Northern Illinois, had tried for years to really make contact and make inroads with the Spanish-speaking population in Northern Illinois. And it wasn't until they went to a Dia de los Muertos celebration and really connected with the community organizer that they began to really have some traction. And that leads us into WhatsApp, because that's, again, engaging with this community is really about meeting them where they're at. And as you all probably know, WhatsApp is where they're at. So Abby is going to share her screen. We're going to just go through a really quick slide deck that we put together that introduces you to it. There's a lot more to know about WhatsApp and how to use WhatsApp than we actually know. So this is just a really quick introduction about what it is and a few tips to get started. And again, I don't assume you're going to be putting out a WhatsApp newsletter in the next couple of weeks or so. So we may revisit this in January, okay, when it is more appropriate. So I don't know how familiar you guys are with WhatsApp. I happen to live in San Diego, so there's a lot of people who cross the border all the time. And if you want to talk to anybody who lives in Tijuana, you're going to be using WhatsApp. It's free, an absolutely free messaging app that allows you to send text messages, voice messages, photos, videos, documents, all that kind of thing. It's used all over the place. Certainly Mexican immigrants and immigrants from Latin and Central America are very prominent on this application. Next slide. Lots and lots of people, 2 billion active users, really young people. They spend a lot of time on the app. India has the most, and it's the most used mobile messenger app in the world. Next slide. And it's young people. It's millennials, especially between people, who were born from 1981 to 1996. Older people, certainly within the Latino demographic and the immigrant demographic, but really it's younger people, just like we know younger people are texting more than anybody else. And again, this is just showing you that, 18 to 34 years, that's where these people are. And, the other cohort that I lead is the cohort of stations that are trying to reach youth. And we are exceedingly painfully aware that they are not listening to the radio. They are getting their news from texting, from other sources altogether. So, WhatsApp is a good place to go. One of the advantages is that it has much higher engagement rate. The newsletters are, a great source of being able to reach listeners and viewers, but the engagement rate, the click-through rate are pretty small. Not so on WhatsApp. They actually get a very high engagement rate. And there's also interactive features that allow you to ask questions, do surveys, go back and forth with your with people who subscribe to your newsletter on WhatsApp. And then they have some really good performance metrics that allow you to track the success and the challenges. And now Natalie's going to take it over.
Yeah, so I'm here to kind of share experience in two different regards. The first is with KUNR Public Radio here in Reno. I launched a WhatsApp newsletter for KUNR in 2021 called Tu Voz, and some of you who are at the fly-in heard me talk about this more, so it'll be a little bit of a repeat. But we've learned a lot of things through trial and error. In 2021, two of these options on this slide here did not exist: the communities and the channels. So all of this is to say everything we present today, whenever it makes sense for your teams, the key here is to just start trying things out. Start signing up for WhatsApp newsletters in English or in Spanish, so you can start to see what some of the different formats, some of the different styles are. And then once you kind of see one that might be a good example of what you might want to try to emulate, then that's what I would recommend at that point, like going to that organization, those people, and picking their brain exactly about their workflow to make that work, because there's a bunch of different ways to do this. The broadcast lists are, you use the WhatsApp Business app on any phone, though the one caveat there is, from at least my experience and talking to a few other people who run these, you can't run a personal WhatsApp and a WhatsApp Business from the same number at the same time. So what I did based on advice from others like Connect Arizona out of Phoenix or Documented out of New York, was I advocated, and about a year after starting, got a phone from the station with its own phone number phone plan. And it doesn't have to be a fancy smartphone, but I would recommend not going with the most basic, cheapest model because I had some issues with being able to attach things that I wanted to a broadcast list, specifically the audio. So one of the benefits of using WhatsApp is that you can engage people and have everything be within the platform. You're not trying to send them to your website. At least that's not the goal for most of us, because we know clicking through, getting them through that hoop to your website will reduce the number of people who interact with your content. So I attached the MP3 file of the audio we want directly in that broadcast list. The broadcast list works like any kind of list serve, really, and people message that WhatsApp business account and say, hey, I'd like to sign up. You can create an automated message that says that, so you know why people are messaging you. Then you go ahead and add them to that broadcast list, list serve. And from there, then you can send out that same message and attach audio, and that goes out to your whole list. Those are capped at 256 contacts. So if you get to the point where you have a large amount of people who are signing up, you're going to be making multiple broadcast lists. And I have not gotten to this point yet. At KUNR, we have just over 100 people, which we are happy to have made a lot of that progress this year now that we have a weekly 5-minute Spanish segment newscast that I send out there. But that's where the communities come in. From what I can tell, just looking at some of the ones I follow, Connect Arizona is a good example of that because they have their broadcast list, they send out their newsletter, but they join together their different communities, their different lists on communities. And in there, you can use an announcements function to send out the same message to everybody. So once you get to the point of like, how do I bring some of these different groups together? That's where communities comes in. That's a newer function of WhatsApp since Facebook took over. And then the channels is something that my work at Fact Chequeado uses. And I have a few slides with some QR codes if you want to sign up for any of these. Channels are, it's up at the top if you go to the channels section in WhatsApp, and it functions kind of like a story does. There's WhatsApp stories, which is separate, but the channels, it's there. You click on it, you can consume it as you want. It's one directional. So the thing there is you're not getting those messages back from people. So it depends what your goal is, right? Like at KUNR, we really want to have an easy way for our Spanish speaking community to message us back, send us tips, that sort of thing. So we haven't launched a channel yet. With my work with Fact Chequeado, which is a Spanish language fact checking organization that is also partnered with America Amplified, we use our channels there to send media literacy information. So that way, people are getting this content from us, videos send well through there, as well as polls, multimedia things. And that's one way you can send that. So if it's more like you're just trying to send things out without necessarily wanting that engagement back, a channel can be a good way to get that in front of people without it going, straight into their inbox. Next slide, please, Abby. So this just breaks down, if you want a little bit more of like the description of what these are, we have that for you there. The broadcast list is the longest standing function. So places like Documented, Connect Arizona, and the other public media example is NHPR, New Hampshire Public Radio, has their KI de Nuevo New Hampshire newsletter, which was an example for us through America Amplified in 2020. They also started with a broadcast list. Next slide, please. And then, so that's just an example of like how you go about it. Next slide. And then just the steps for how to do it, which a lot of this, once you have the phone and you put WhatsApp Business on it, then you start building the profile in there. Generally you want a name for it, like KI de Nuevo New Hampshire, or I went with Tu Voz at KUNR. We were trying to think of something short that included our U logo. So there you can build the identity of it. Signing up for these like NHPR or Tu Voz is how I figured out what fields I wanted to fill in and was missing, and had some examples to look to for how do you put the short description, what kind of automated message do I want to send out, program so that when people sign up, it sends that back to me to sign them up. And some of this you might be wondering, well, why don't you just send out messages on WhatsApp to their phone numbers? Like, why don't you collect their phone numbers and do that? There is a piece with WhatsApp where if you're sending a message from an unknown number, it can often get like sent to spam, but in a way where people don't even see it. It's not like, oh, just check your spam folder and you'll have this from me. So that's why there's this step of having them add your phone to their phone contacts and message you. It's all kind of how WhatsApp works. Next slide, please. And so just to give people examples, like wrap your head around this, as well as like talk about how you grow something like this. When I started Tu Voz with KUNR, we didn't have anyone else on the team who spoke Spanish, and I was part-time. So we knew we had like a limited bandwidth for what we could do here. We didn't want to commit to anything daily or even weekly at that point, because we knew that the consistency piece is important and we want to make sure it's something I could do regularly. So we just started with once a month. It was a part of a project I did with the Solutions Journalism Network. So part of it was highlighting solution stories in Spanish. What I did at first was it was a monthly news roundup of content in Spanish from KUNR and our partners. So we knew we didn't necessarily even have the content on our end to solely fill this on our own. So I highlighted content in Spanish from the Nevada Independent here in Nevada, as well as places like Noticiero Móvil, which is a bilingual student newsroom from the Reynolds School of Journalism here at the University of Nevada, Reno, or from other outlets around the country if it was a solution story that made sense. So I was looking at it. When you look at launching something like this, I always think about what Daniela Ali at NHPR told me, which was she took this all on at first and it was a lot. Like she had to have a very frank discussion with her management about how much time she was spending to be able to do what. They at first, as a COVID response there, had a daily newscast for which they translated from their English newscast into Spanish. They figured out daily was too big of a lift for them, so they moved to twice a week. So it's all speaking to like being very thoughtful about what you promise to do on here with the staff that you have, right? So we were monthly. And then now I have a colleague who's full-time, who is bilingual Spanish dominant from Chile. And we offer our Al Aire on the air news segment. And we air that on KUNR now as of this year. It goes on our airwaves in Spanish with no translation into English. We are offering that same thing. Now I have that piece of content that my colleague is producing to send out once a week. So every Friday at noon, or today, because we had this, I sent it a little early. We have that 5-minute audio segment that I send out with a recap of the stories that you're going to hear in the segment, just their headlines. So people have a bit of an incentive to click on it. Then we also provide a link to the version of the story on our website, as well as the Spanish section of our website. If people want to click through, they can, but the idea is they're going to get everything new from us all in one place. Next slide, please. And so I already went through, I included these links. So when we share this presentation, you'll have some easy ways to just sign up for some of these. So NHPR was my big example when I went to set up Tu Voz, as far as like the profile, just how to like kind of digestibly explain this. We have it also inspiration from them at the top of our Spanish page on Grove on our KUNR website. We have a sign up for our Tu Voz WhatsApp newsletter. And I took inspiration from how NHPR explained theirs at the top of their Spanish page. Next slide, please. Conecta Arizona is not public media, but it is independent digital media that I've been working with for several years. And they originated as a media outlet on WhatsApp. So WhatsApp is at the heart of what they do. I'm so happy that over the past 4 years, since they also launched as a pandemic response, they have expanded. So they have a radio show, they have their website, they have a Substack newsletter, but they have several different things on WhatsApp. So if you have either folks in Spanish or folks who just want to see different formats, they have that newsletter that you can get on a weekly basis from a broadcast list. They have a group, which is where it all started, where you can contribute to a group conversation. It's like other groups on WhatsApp or a group message. But what they do there is they manage the admin permissions so that during certain times, anyone can message in there, then they change it and it's admin only. So it's not like this unmonitored group chat. And the idea there is that they're doing that community listening, getting feedback from people, but also bringing in experts. So that's a group. And then they join a lot of these things together through the community. So that's a great example of like the different formats as opposed to those of us who are doing just one for now. Next example, please. And then Fact Chequeado, which is another thing we did a separate session here on Zoom with America Amplified about Fact Chequeado, and it also came up at the fly-in. But what we're doing there is also slightly different. We have a WhatsApp chat bot, which one of the founding organizations of Fact Chequeado is called Maldita, out of Spain, based in Madrid. And they developed a chatbot technology, which is part of what Fact Chequeado does, but that chatbot isn't like part of a WhatsApp service. It's not something that people can just get. If people have funding and are interested in something like that, I can ask how people go about contracting them. I know that Documented in New York now uses this technology with their WhatsApp. They contracted Maldita. So we have that. What this does, and this is pretty fun to sign up for. If you want to skip to the next slide, Abby, I think it's the next one. Yes. If you want to sign up for this right now with your phone, if not, no worries, but I have the QR code here. So I thought I might as well. When you sign up for this chat bot, the bot there's a few things that are automated with it that are different from what you see with those of us who are just using standard WhatsApp Business. When you sign up, you just send any message like hola or hi or whatever you want, and the bot will give you a menu of options. Now, with all of these, the one thing that is very important is to save the phone number to your phone contacts. And if you don't have your WhatsApp contacts synced with your phone contacts, you can also have some issues. So you want to make sure you have that once you get more into this WhatsApp space. The bot will give you a menu of options, which includes like our audio roundup of the week. You can sign up for our Sunday newsletter, lots of different things through here. But the general concept with this, which I will keep it short, is any community member can send suspicious looking mis or disinformation to us as a fact-checking organization. And the bot is going to do an initial like analysis of if it thinks we have any content related to your query, and it's going to send some initial, articles from us to you and say like, is this what you were looking for? Yes or no. And then the bot, keeps asking questions to see if it's solved what you need. All of those, messages, suspicious content, that also goes to our reporting team, who is monitoring to see if there's trends in the types of questions, the type of disinformation that's coming in, which is part of our monitoring process to then create fact checks and send back out. We do that with all of our media partners. We publish those on our website, but the team can also follow up one-on-one with these people who send in their questions. So it gets back to that listening piece. The other thing we have, in addition to this bot, is we have a WhatsApp channel, and that's where we send out our media literacy information. We have those videos. We have polls that you can do in WhatsApp. And we also have some other things like a whole track of this specifically for the election, where people can go through, there's like a media literacy, like challenge quiz. There's lots of things, which I could spend a whole session on that. But so this is just an example of like taking it to the next level, especially if you have something like some special technology dedicated to it. Next slide, please. So yeah, this gets into just a little bit of information. You can see WhatsApp has more on all of this to break down what are these different things it offers. If at some point you have like a grant, just all this to say, all of these things that are possible are great things to write into a grant if you're applying for funding to support some of your Spanish language efforts. And if you understand these pieces better of how this all works, you might be able to articulate better what you want to do on WhatsApp. WhatsApp has more information on that, and they have really evolved, especially over the last 5 years, as far as like their friendliness to media using WhatsApp to send out content. Like in 2019, 2020, there were places that, like Radio Ambulante had a group on there, and it got shut down because at different points it was like WhatsApp didn't know quite what it wanted to do with media. Now it has these different offerings. Next slide. the channels. And Elisa, let me know if you want to jump in on any of this.
Yeah, I'll just say, as Natalie was saying, she talked about Fact Checkiado sending information out on channels. This is a one-way delivery method that, as you can see, a ton of mainstream news organizations, NPR is not one of them, but this is how many followers CNN's WhatsApp channel has, New York Times, BBC. And again, it's just one-way delivery. It's just a way of it's like a newsletter, sending out your stuff. There's no interactivity. But it's pretty simple, and it's become a very big deal. The New York Times wrote about it in just the last couple of days, actually, talking about how obviously X has not become a great a delivery platform anymore, and this is the place a lot of news organizations are turning. Next slide. Yep. So these are just some resources to read up on a little bit more of this. You guys, we went through a lot of information. I really appreciate the fact that Natalie is coming from a very small newsroom, and she did this through experimentation, just doing only as much as her bandwidth allowed at any given time. So I think that's a really good example of how to experiment with something like this. Do you guys have any questions? Because now's a good time to throw it out there. I know that was a lot, and you'll have to dive in and figure out what works for you. But any questions over the short term?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Maria Elena.
Oh, thank you. Well, Natalie, I was just wondering, like, when you started, what was your initial like goal, or when you first started, and has it changed, or the same?
That was for me. My computer cut out right when you were asking the question.
She said, what was your initial goal when you started out, and has it changed?
Yes. So when we started, and some of the first, pushes, inspiration to get this going were working with America Amplified way back in 2020, which feels like a million years ago. But when we were looking to NHPR and these different COVID responses through WhatsApp, we really wanted to do something then in 2020. But talking with my news editor, we knew we just didn't quite have what we needed to continue that forward. We needed a better workflow to make sure we had at least monthly content in Spanish from us, and that we had these partnerships set up with other organizations so that we could pull in their content as needed. So it was more at first, and this is like the thing I love to emphasize about this, just starting small. Most of that subscriber list when we started was people I directly invited. We weren't just waiting for community members to show up. A nice example from NHPR was how they really started with focus groups, and they invited those community leaders to sign up for their newscast, got their feedback, and then that also was their base from which they could grow the subscriber list. So starting small there was really just the goal of a way to collect everything we were doing in Spanish on a monthly basis and show it to people. So we weren't hoping that they'd go explore on our website or find our social media. So now the goal is really increasing the frequency of the service, because we know if someone's getting something from you once a month, they're not relying on that as their news source, right? It's kind of like an extra nice bonus. So that was the goal with going to once a week. We knew we needed to have another person dedicated to this. Now our news editor is also bilingual, which means we can get everything finished with this in-house with me part-time, with our full-time reporter and our editor. So that's where we are right now, is upping the consistency and seeing then, how we can expand. I would like to, see if it makes sense to either adapt what we send out through the broadcast list and package it for the channel, because there is a piece here of people seeing your message from the broadcast list. And I know that there's a few roadblocks with that I'm still working out, as far as people sign up. Well, they send the message that says, hi, I want to sign up. I add them to the broadcast list. And then I know a few folks who I've kind of done A/B testing with, who then never got my messages from that broadcast list. And there's a myriad of reasons. Either they didn't save the number to their phone like we told them they should with an automated message when they signed up, or they didn't have their WhatsApp contacts synced with their phone contacts. Or also there's a piece of engagement here, like if people don't respond to you, or do an emoji response to your message on WhatsApp, at some point, if they don't ever interact with your content, then they kind of drop off that list. That's what I've determined talking to Maritza at Connect Arizona, NHPR, things like that. So the question is something like a channel that goes out, are people going to see that differently or more effectively than the broadcast list, depending on their phone settings? So it's a question of like, can we start to use these different channels with the content we have, not adding the creation of more content, but just repackaging it to leverage these different WhatsApp functions now.
Zach, I believe Connect to Arizona is based in Tucson. Just
Oh, okay.
interestingly. So
Yeah.
it might be somebody to have coffee with and just chat.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Not that she wants a competition. Maybe it's somebody to collaborate with, frankly.
Yeah.
Maybe
And-
content that you could contribute to Connect Arizona.
Yeah, and Maritza, and I believe Maritza is Phoenix based, but I know one of her main contributors in Argentina, like they're a little bit all over the place. But she is really good about collaboration. She's part of the Fact Chequeado community. She's part of the Sember Media community I run, which is for Spanish language independent media. So she's one of those people who really gets why collaborating is important. So definitely contact her. Message the WhatsApp, the Connect Arizona WhatsApp, and you can get in all their different groups too.
And I mean, you covered a lot of this just a moment ago, but yeah, I mean, tips, tricks, best practice, if you do this to gaining and building that audience, especially getting that start, sometimes that's the trickiest thing.
Yeah, and where we've seen a nice uptick in like organic signups as opposed to me asking people I know to sign up is with tabling at community events. I make sure to have like there's the QR codes, you know, which we've had big flyers, we've had handouts, but also just having the phone number, because there is like a QR code barrier, especially when you get into like, who is your audience here with Spanish language news? It might not be those young folks who are on WhatsApp because they're family, but they're consuming their news in English. So then how do we make this friendly for people who are in an older age bracket who need their news in Spanish? So we've, gone through things like that. Like, don't just have the QR code if they don't know or want to scan that, but provide the phone number, and then they can just add us to their phone like any other person that they would add to their phone and to their WhatsApp. But a lot of those have been at those community events. It's specifically, like we have our Hispanic Heritage Month festival here in town, or a Dia de los Muertos event, like anywhere where you're going to find people. And then the idea of the sign, if I had a sign on that said, talk to me in Spanish, and we had a WhatsApp phone number, that would help too, right? Just letting people know, like, yes,
like
we are
that
here to
idea.
serve you. Yeah.
Well, and I was going to say too, is that we know that the younger generation uses WhatsApp, but may not need Spanish. So
Yeah.
that's a way of reaching a younger immigrant or maybe second or third generation Latino audience too in English. So maybe you do a bilingual newsletter where you offer both. I don't know. Julie and
yeah.
Sasha and Abby, if you guys wouldn't mind coming on screen for a second, Natalie would love to have a photo of everybody.
Thank you.
I'm not saying we
Yes.
need to stop. I just wanted to make sure we got that.
Thank you. You remembered, Elisa. I appreciate it. Hold on. I'm trying to pull up my screenshot tool, which decided to freeze.
Sure, I can do it for
I
you.
will let. Oh,
Okay.
thank you.
Smile, everybody. 1, 2, 3. One of those trays. There we go. Got it.
Thank you.
Any
Yeah,
other
and
questions?
I mean, the one thing I will highlight here is like a lot of what we've done has really leaned on going to other people who are doing it and asking them specific questions as you get started. Like there's a public radio station in Washington State, Northwestern Public Radio, I think, who found us at KUNR doing this work on WhatsApp. And we just had a call. I'm always happy to sit down with a team when you're like, okay, we're ready to start doing something. We're trying to A, figure out where to start, or B, like what the steps are. So we just walk through like, yes, once you are able to get a phone with a phone plan to dedicate to this, you'll be in a really good place to start this. And then I just walk them through my first steps, and I know they've just started. So a lot of it is just, picking one place to start with a reasonable frequency, and then just going to all of us who are working in this space now that there's more than 1 or 2 people to go to.